All right, next one, ladies and gentlemen. So the next time period is going to be Neo-Classical Art. Now, Neo-Classical Art is art that is very interesting because of the following thing. So when we look at the word neo, neo means new. So it's new classical, which means old art. So it's new old art, right? So it's art with new classic Greek and Roman values, and this art is specially made for the lower class people. This art is there to inspire the normal people that they are better, or that they should start fighting against the three upper classes. Okay? That is the overall goal of this art. So this art is not for the aristocracy, this art is not for the church, this art is to educate the normal people about Greek and Roman culture, and that they should become more like the Greek and the Romans, and that they should start to fight against the people that dominate them, mainly the monarch, the clergy, and the aristocracy, right? Now, this painting is a very good example of a neoclassical painting. So, this painting has the following thing in it. So, I'll take a second to look at this painting, and then I will explain a little bit what this painting is all about, right? Now, in the time period that this painting is painted, the people do not wear clothes like this at all, right? So what type of clothes are these? Well, these are traditional Greek or Roman clothes, right? Another thing that you can see is you can see the pillars behind the ladies are pillars that are typically Greek and Roman, right? So Greek and Roman elements. Now, I told you that since the Middle Ages, when the Roman Empire collapses, the Europeans have always started to look back to the Greeks and the Romans, because the Greeks and the Romans were way more advanced than they were, right? The Greeks and Romans were able to build these humongous buildings when the people in Europe were still living in longhouses, right? So it's always a big inspiration, right? Now, this painting shows us the following things. It shows us on the right hand side a woman who is holding gold and jewelry and is showing off to the other woman how rich she is. But this painting is making fun of this lady because it's doing the following thing. You can see the woman in white is looking at her and showing with her right hand her family. And she says, you know what? Wealth is not measurable in gold. Wealth you measure in having a family. Having a family is way more important than being rich, right? So you can see the children on the left hand side. The one child is guiding the other child. He's looking lovingly at his little brother, right? And the only of the children that is interested in the gold is the tiny little girl, right? She likes to play with it because it's nice and shiny. So the lady in red on the right hand side is being compared to a little child, right? So it's saying, you know what, these rich people might be rich, but they don't understand what true happiness is because they don't have a family or take care of each other, right? So that is the purpose of this painting. So Rococo art is all about, yeah, having affairs, and those of course are bad morals, right? If you are a good husband, you're not going to cheat, right? If you're a good husband, you're going to take care of your family, right? So taking care of your family is a good moral thing to do. Cheating is a bad moral thing to do. So this art is a reaction against what came before. It's showing off everything that was wrong with the people of the aristocracy. So this art is really to inspire normal people to fight against the aristocracy, the king, and the church. Oops. Hoppa. So it's no longer, the purpose of art was this. Okay. Now there's going to be three main reasons why the art is going to change from Rococo to neoclassical art. And I will explain those to you next. So you need to know these because you need to answer them. There's three main reasons. Here we go. So the first reason is the Age of Enlightenment and the Grand Tour. So I'll explain this to you. If you want to become an artist, and you go to art academy, because in this time period people went to school to become artists, right? Then when you're done with your art academy study, you would go to Rome. You would go to Italy, to Rome, and there you would study Greek and Roman art, right? Now, when the artists went to Rome to study, then they would find a lot of beautiful sculptures, and they would draw and paint these sculptures, and they would learn a lot about how art was made in the time periods of the Greeks and the Romans, right? Now, not only would they learn a lot about the art that was being made, they also learned a lot about the culture, right? And one of the things that they learned about the culture is they learned this culture at certain times in its history was, for example, a dictatorship, was also a kingdom or a monarchy, but there was also this one political system that really inspired them. It was called democracy. So they learned about democracy. And of course, in a democracy, everybody has equal rights, everybody has a vote, right? And the people in Europe do not have this, because the people in Europe are basically living under control of the king, the church, and the lords and the ladies, right? So when the people come back, the artists come back to France after studying in Rome, they bring back all their knowledge of how to make these beautiful sculptures and paintings, but they also bring back knowledge over democracy. So this is called the Age of Enlightenment, right? So in the Renaissance, people start to ask themselves questions about how science works, how religion works, and that basically continues now, because now they really start to pick up on political systems, and they start to pick up on that a democracy is a better system for the majority of the people, right? So that's the first reason, the Age of Enlightenment and the Grand Tour. Now the second reason is the ruins of Herculaneum and Pompeii. So in the year 79 after Jesus Christ is born, there's a giant volcano that erupts, the Vesuvius in Italy. And when this volcano erupts, it spews out large clouds of ash, and this ash immediately starts to rain down on these two towns. One is called Pompeii and the other is called Herculaneum. And what happens is that the people die. They all die super quickly, right? And then it keeps on raining ashes, and these two towns get completely covered in ash, right? Now, in the neoclassical time period, they rediscover these two towns. They start to excavate and they start to dig, and they start to uncover these two towns. And what they find is they find that the society and the houses and the things people had in the houses, and they find sewage systems, and they find that life was way better for the people that were living in that time period than how the people are living currently in France themselves. So you can imagine they get pretty angry. There's like, look, like 1600 years ago, people were living in way better situation than we are living today. Oh, coincidentally, they also had a democracy, right? So this really is a time capsule, see? So you really get a good idea of what the houses look like, what people had in the houses, what the street looked like. You know, we find so much information, right? Now the third reason is the age of revolution, because there's going to be a humongous revolution, a revolution against the king, the aristocracy, and the church, right? So basically what's going to happen is the following thing. The church will spend, the monarch will spend so much money, and they keep on increasing the taxes, right? So I will tell you what happens. But first let me show you this picture, because it makes a little bit more sense when I show you, let me see, this first. Okay, so The French Revolution basically kicks off as followed. The monarch can no longer find enough money, right? So what he does is he gets the three estates together, right? So this is very special. There's a national assembly. He's going to call upon the three estates to come together, right? So the three estates are made of the clergy, the aristocracy, the third estate, which is the normal people. Now basically the king asked them to come together to find a solution how to get more money to the king, right? Because he's bankrupt. So then it works like this. There is the aristocracy, then there is the clergy, and then there is the normal people, right? Normal people. So they come up with the following idea. The normal people say, and they all have representatives in here in the three estates, and then they vote on different things, right? So basically he says, okay, well, the normal people say, we have an idea. Why don't we have the aristocracy also start to pay taxes? That might be a good solution, right? But then, of course, they vote on it. So then the aristocracy says no, the clergy says no, and the normal people say yes. Now, even though this is 97% of the people, they have the same amount of people representing them, right? So, of course, the answer is no, because these two guys always work together, right? So when the normal people say, well, I think the clergy needs to start to pay taxes, then the aristocracy and the clergy work together and they say no. So nothing changes. And then the normal people get really, really angry, right? So they leave from the assembly to go to lunch. Then when they come back, they discover that the walls or the doors to the assembly hall have been closed, so they have no place to go. So then they find this tennis court, and then they come together there and they say, okay, we're done with this. We are going to become a republic. We no longer want to listen to the king, and they write their Bill of Independence, basically, right? So that's what they do. Now, from that moment on, it's going to be a giant mess. Lots and lots of people are going to be killed. In the end, the king is also going to lose his head. And basically, this is going to be the end of feudalistic society. And it's sort of going to become the beginning of democracy in Europe. It's going to be a failed democracy in the beginning, but it really is the start of change, the start of change of society in Europe. So all countries that are in Western civilization these days are all democracies where everybody has the same rights and everybody can vote. And the seed for that really is sown in the French Revolution, right? So that is very important because it changes society by very, very much. Okay, so I go back. So the lead up to all of these revolutionary things happening, you can see that throughout these paintings, right? So this is a very interesting painting. This is a Greek story about three brothers that are going to pick up swords, as you can see, and they're going to fight another city. There's going to be a war in Greek time periods between two different city-states, and of course when you have both those city-states fighting with each other, a lot of men will die. So both city-states say, okay, we'll find three brothers who will fight to represent our city versus three brothers who will fight to represent the other city, right? So that is what this painting is showing us over here. Three brothers picking up weapons to defend, well, who? Their city, and of course the poor women and old people on the right hand side and the children, right? So it's all about fighting what is rightfully yours or defending things, right? So how to recognize neoclassical art? Well, it's super simple. Whenever you see any elements that look remotely close-wise or situation-wise like it might be Greek or Roman, then you're looking at Neo-classical art, right? There are no old paintings left because they have not withstand the time. The old mosaics that are Greek and Roman left, but zero paintings. So whenever you see a painting that has Greek or Roman elements in it, you're talking about neoclassical art. I'm personally not a huge fan of neoclassical art. I think it's a little bit boring, but it does is an important part of history, of course, and it's the beginning of democracy, so it's very important. Now, another way you can recognize it on top of the clothes is that when you look at them, you can see over here the bottom one, the people have really nice, calm, statuesque poses because the artists that went to Rome, they painted a lot of sculptures, and sculptures stand very still, right? Now, you can see these are all neoclassical paintings, and they're very simple to recognize, as you can see, right? You can recognize the buildings, the clothes. That's really it, right? Oops. Now, there are also a lot of neoclassical statues, but they do not necessarily look like Greek and Roman statues, because there still were a lot of Greek and Roman statues left, because they do withstand the test of time. They decided not to dress people in Greek and Roman clothes, but what they did do is they used all the Greek and Roman sculpting techniques, and they would use those to sculpt. So you can see these are some really beautiful sculptures made of presidents of the United States, right? But you can see they are not wearing the clothes that the Greeks and the Romans were. Now, you can see these are over here buildings. On the left hand side on top is the Arc de Triomphe in Paris, and this is a monument erected because of the French Revolution, and it is looking like a Greek or Roman building, basically, right? So all democracies for their government buildings use elements that are Greek and Roman, because that is where democracy comes from. So the White House is inspired by Greek and Roman architecture, right? And of course, every democracy will use this because that is where it comes from. See, you can see these buildings. They're new buildings in Greek and Roman style, and they always look very powerful and big, right? And they all come from temples, because the Greeks built temples in this style, then the Romans built government buildings in this style, and the Europeans start to build government buildings in this style as well. See? Cool. Nice. Okay. So I'll show you a couple more examples. Here we go. This is a super famous painting. This is the death of Marat. And Marat used to write like in the newspaper about people who were against the revolution, and then those people would be killed. He would make lists of people that were against the revolution. Now, a woman's brother gets killed, even though he was not against the revolution, and then she sends him a letter saying, I have information about somebody who was against the revolution, who was like really important. And then he says, okay, send it in a letter. And then she says, no, he's too powerful, I have to tell you in person. So then he says, okay, come on over. And then she comes on over, and then she wants to whisper it in his ear, but instead of whispering it in his ear, she takes revenge, and she plunges this knife into his chest, and then he dies, right? So this is sort of a painting that is in between, right? So you can see we still have a cherub over here, and this is sort of still a little bit Rococo, because, you know, like cherubs are part of Rococo art, but you can see it's painted in neoclassical style. So there's always paintings that are sort of in between, and those are often very interesting, right? So this one could go for neoclassical, but it could also go for Rococo still, an in-between painting. Cool. Hoppa. Beautiful statue drawing style, neoclassical, beautiful neoclassical painting. Oftentimes in neoclassical painting, you will not be able to find a single brushstroke. It is like meticulously blended together. It is really, really nice and really, really beautiful. Here we go. Look, so nice. Okay, this is neoclassical. Next one will be romantic. I'm excited to tell you about that one because that's my most favorite art.